All right. So this long, holiday Thanksgiving weekend has been fun and all, but now it's time for an adventurous Smitty. I think we need to go do some running around because I've been in the house. I was sick before this holiday, so I've been locked down for the most part for the better part of a week. And it's time to get the hell out of this house and let's see if we can go have some fun with Smitty. So let's go see where we end up. Okay, so we're back. What we did and unfortunately, I waited too late in the day, so I ran out of time. But we didn't leave until about 11:15, 11:30, which meant that, to get anywhere, you've got to be moving. So what I did was I left here and I went up to Highway 64 and went east, went through Pawnee, and just blew through Pawnee. We've been through Pawnee before. Here's a couple of pictures of what we saw in Pawnee. Um, and then over to Cleveland, and then I went up and east through Skytook and Collinsville. And in Collinsville, I got on 169 headed north, and that was kind of my goal, was to go east to 169, then go up through up to the north, and then back through the prettiness that is the Osage Nation. So like I said, I was just getting after it as quick as I possibly could to get through to Collinsville. Jumped on 169 and went north on 169. And the first little town that I came to was Oologah. And Oologah, this whole kind of area of Oklahoma, is part of where the Cherokee Nation settled whenever they were brought into Oklahoma as part of the relocation of the Native American people. And so this area over here was part of the Cherokee Nation, and the town was established like so many towns in this part of the world, or most of your smaller rural towns that were out here in the Midwest or the West, when the railroad came through. And so they established a railroad line, and Oologah was one of the towns that popped up along the new railroad line. And it was pretty prosperous pretty early in the late 1800s and early 1900s. And unfortunately took a pretty big beating, like most towns in this part of the country did, during the Great Depression. And so when I was looking for cool places to take pictures of, I found this bank building, this original bank building that was established in, I think it said 1906, and closed in 1932, and during the Depression. When I got there, I was hoping to get out, take pictures of Smitty in front of the building and all of that stuff. But there were a couple of guys that were putting Christmas lights on the building, and so I didn't want to disturb their work. And I was, you always kind of look weird whenever you're standing out there talking to yourself and taking pictures of a car. So, not that I'm opposed to that, because it's not the first time I've talked to myself, but here we go. So, took a picture of the bank and then loaded up and continued north. I came into the little town of Talala, and again, another one of those wide spots on the road that was created during the early railroad when it came through. And Talala, the kind of was originally a big cattle supplier for the railroad. They had a lot of feed yards and sales and cattle operations that fed cattle to the railroad. Also had its decline during the Great Depression, and ultimately they ended up tearing down or dismantling all of their old cool brick buildings. So what I found was this real pretty old church building that has the bell tower above the front doors. Has been added onto several times, but the original building is sitting there, and I thought that was a neat building. So We grabbed a quick pic of Smitty in front of it, and then decided, keep rolling. Got to get north. So we went up through, continued north on 169. Went north into Nowata. And Nowata's a neat town. There's a lot of neat stuff in Nowata. Nowata, when I came into town, I ran across this Rudd Motel, and complete with its really cool old sign that still had, some of its neon working. And actually the majority of the neon was working on it, which is kind of cool. As I was standing there taking pictures, the place looked deserted. I mean, it didn't look like it was abandoned, but it didn't look like anybody was there. And so I was, sitting there. Smitty was sitting out there idling, making, keeping the neighbors up. And I was taking pictures of the sign, taking pictures of Smitty. And this door, you can see in the picture here, this door creaked open about that far, and I couldn't see anybody, but I heard the door creak open, and it sat there for a minute, and then the door shut, and I was like, all right, it's time to go. We're disturbing people. And I didn't think anybody was here, so I'm just going to keep rolling. So we jumped out and took off, and I ended up, I have a thing for old train depots. I think they're neat buildings. They tend to have some pretty neat construction, and they almost always are laying, have kind of an industrial feel to them, which is, a look that I like. And so I found the Nowata old train depot, and was took some pictures around it, and took some pictures of this cool beam construction that it's got. There was this neat yard behind it that had had a handful of old cars in it, that was kind of across the tracks and behind the fence that you can see here. And then I actually was, trying to get a little artsy on this trip. And so I was taking kind of a lower picture of Smitty in front of the building. And I actually just dumb luck, caught this picture of this leaf blowing through the picture. And you can see the shadow underneath the leaf. And I just dumb luck caught it as it blew by, which I thought was, in retrospect, when I was going through the pictures, like, this is kind of cool. Couldn't have done that if I'd have planned it, but it worked out. So I milled around in Nowata for a bit, and then, got to keep rolling. So headed north out of Nowata into the little community of Delaware. And in Delaware, the neatest building that I could find in Delaware that was left was this building, and it's a shame that somebody did that kind of storefront facade on it, because it kind of takes away from the beauty of this building. But look at the brickwork on this thing. It's kind of impressive how much how intricate the brickwork is for a building in a relatively small town, and always been a small town. That was probably done in the I'm guessing probably in the 1910s to 1920s, pre-Depression days, whenever this was done, and just pretty brickwork. As I was driving around Delaware, and Delaware's, maybe between 200 and 300 people, maybe. As I was driving around, I found another yard that was behind a shop building, and it probably had, 24 vehicles in it. And it was everything from kind of rat roddy kind of builds to just rust sitting out there waiting its turn. But there was, a couple of handfuls of some pretty neat cars sitting in that yard. And I thought about getting out and taking some pictures of it, but it had no trespassing signs all over it. And Smitty's not a subtle car. When I'm rolling through these little tiny itsy bitsy towns that aren't even on a main road, I was 2 miles off the highway to get to it. 1.5 miles, 2 miles. And so as I'm driving through these little towns, people were out. It was a pretty evening or afternoon. And so you had people kind of looking up, watching us go by. And I don't want to spook people, and I don't want people to think that I'm there doing something that I shouldn't be doing. So the fact that it had no trespassing signs everywhere, I chose to admire it from the street and keep moving. And I didn't even get out and take pictures of it, because they obviously don't want people in there, and I don't blame them. So respect that and keep moving. So I left there and headed up to the little town of Lenape. There's not much left of Lenape. The only building I could find was this little, what's left of this building, and pretty neat storefront. Used to be Main Street downtown building that the roof has been gone a long time. And if you, this zoomed in picture, you can see the sides of those trees that are growing up from the ground through the second floor and out the roof, or out what used to be the roof. But still a neat building. Unfortunately, it's been there a while, but at some point it's just going to give up and fall down. And that's one of the reasons why I like getting out and doing this. Getting out and riding around back roads and seeing these things that eventually will be gone, and they'll be gone forever, and you'll never be able to nobody's going to put any effort into replacing them, because if they're not willing to put effort into saving them, they're definitely not going to be put any effort into replacing them. So it's neat to get to see them before they fall down. So after Lenape, I don't know. I continued going north and got to Highway 10. Highway 10 is about, I don't know, 5-10 miles south of Kansas, of the Oklahoma-Kansas state line, and went back to the to the west on Highway 10. And Highway 10 is a rare and unique thing for that part of Oklahoma. Oklahoma is very much, for the most part, the bulk of Oklahoma is laid out because of the land run of 1890. The Oklahoma is laid out very much in mile sections, so it's a very much a grid, and everything is straight. And you might have a curvy correction line in your road where it moves over a little bit, but for the most part, everything's just straight grids laid out in mile sections. Highway 10 has lots of curves in it, which is kind of surprising. It wanders around out through there, through that part of the country, and there are hills and there are curves. It's unfortunately not very smooth, which means that you can't have a lot of fun with that without fear of hitting a bump and putting it through a fence. But it was still a fun road to drive on. I enjoyed coming back to the west, down that Highway 10. I'd never been down that road, and it was fun to go be a part of it. The first stop on Highway 10 was a little community former town called Wann, Wann, and I found the school building, and again, such a neat building that has been allowed to just fall into a complete state of disrepair, and it's probably not long before it just collapses and falls down. All the windows are broken out of it, but what a neat building to get to see before that happened. But it was getting late in the day, so I wandered around the building a little bit. The windows are actually higher than you would think, so I didn't get up super close because I couldn't tell if it was still sitting on public property or sitting on private property, and I didn't want to dig around in it too much or get too close to it until I could figure it out. And it was getting late in the day, and I was like, I need to get moving before I run out of sunlight. So I headed west to the town of Copan, and Copan was surprisingly bigger than I thought it was going to be, and still had some downtown left. Had a neat kind of bank. I'm guessing former bank building that was sitting on the corner that I got pictures of, and the Foreman Dairy stand. You can still see the signage on the poles that were probably holding up a canopy, and that building couldn't have been 6 feet wide. It got bigger as you went back, like it'd probably been added onto at one point. But the storefront, I mean, I don't know, 6 maybe 10 feet wide at the most. Little original kind of stand, and it's just neat to see. The coolest thing, or the most interesting thing that I found in Copan, was one of those downtown buildings, and there wasn't anybody down there. I would love to go back there during the week and see if I could find somebody around that building, because there's a fenced-in yard beside the building that had probably a dozen E-body Mopar shells. So most of them looked like they were Cudas, not Challengers, just judging by the taillight panels, because they were gutted completely. Literally nothing in them, nothing bolted to them, just shells. But there were close to a dozen of them. And the taillight buckets, most of them appeared to be Cudas instead of Challengers. And it's interesting to me that, number one, how did they all end up, or why are they all here in quite literally the middle of nowhere, north central Oklahoma? And secondly, what's in the building? Is it full of just parts and they just parted them out, and whenever Mopar started taking off and they found a bunch of rusty shells and just scrapped them? Or did they build a bunch? It's interesting. And that's why I'd kind of like to get back there and see it. But anyway, neat place. It's neat to see the cars. But anyway, so kept rolling. Went past Copan Lake, and got on the backside of the dam. Took some pictures back on the lower side of the dam of Copan Lake, and then went by Hula Lake and got some pictures of Smitty out there looking over the Hula Lake, and went through this little town of Bowring. And Bowring, again, not much there, but I found this cool, early 70s Charger that's just slowly, like the building in the background, it's just slowly returning to the earth. And it's sad, and you kind of want somebody to save the car, because it doesn't look like it's so bad that it can't be saved. Of course, that vinyl top's peeling off, which means there's no roof under it. You can almost bet that there's no roof under that vinyl top. But, it might be worth saving. But there it sits, just returning back to the earth, being reclaimed. I was hoping to get to Pawhuska, and so before it got dark. And so I was cannonballing pretty hard back towards Pawhuska. When I got to Pawhuska, the sun is already below the horizon, so it was, I was trying to get some pictures where I could find them. The pictures of this used cars that was painted on the brick was pretty cool, and this old original, or this old storefront warehouse building was pretty neat. Unfortunately, most of downtown, they were doing road construction, so they had a bunch of roads closed, and it was tough to get around. But Pawhuska has a really neat downtown, and it's been revitalized recently in the last 10 years by Ree Drummond, who is, most of you know her as the pioneer woman from the Food Network. Her mercantile building is downtown Pawhuska, and she has done enormous things for that little town and revitalized the downtown area significantly. Really neat downtown, and really neat. There's an Indian school that's up on the top of the hill, and then there's a courthouse up there that is just neat. Neat old architecture, but unfortunately it was packed with people and road construction, so I didn't get a whole lot of pictures. I left Pawhuska, sorry. I left Pawhuska, headed over towards Ponca City down Highway 60. And the sun was going down and it was beautiful. And Highway 60 is not a very busy road. And I came to a complete stop up on a little bump out there so that I could get a picture of that sunset reflecting on the hood of reflecting on Smitty's hood. And man, it was just a beautiful picture and a beautiful sight. And as I continued on to the west, there's a wind farm that's just east of Ponca City out there that's got a bunch of windmills in it. And I found up on top of a hill, I found a bump. I found a little gravel driveway and backed off and, got artsy again with the sunset and Smitty. And I got some neat pictures of the reflection of the sunset in the side of the car. And but probably my favorite is that silhouette picture. I think that thing is amazing with the sunset in the background, and you just get the silhouette of the car with the lights shining on the ground. I think just such a neat picture. But at that point, we were getting dark, and I needed to get home because I don't want to be dodging deer, and you can't be taking pictures of it in the dark. So it loses some of its fun. So I rolled into Ponca City and went downtown Ponca City and got a picture of the tree in front of the courthouse there in Ponca, and then and then cannonballed back home. All in all, really neat trip. I'm glad I made that trip. It was a fun day. I should have left earlier in the day. I should have got up in the morning and left so I could have spent more time before dark. But I also really like the fact and appreciate the fact that I was able to get those sunset pictures out there in the prairies of Oklahoma. And some people might not think it's pretty, and it's pretty in its own way. Rolling prairie sunset, it's not a bad deal. So thanks for watching. If you hung out long enough, thanks for watching, and yeah, we'll go on another adventure with Smitty soon, because I love doing that. I love being out on the back roads and seeing what neat stuff is still around and capturing it before it goes away. So you guys have a good rest of your day, and thanks for watching. See ya.